I don't believe in any kind of quick fix solution, but this challenge may have just changed my mind.
Right now, my life is pretty great. I'm grateful that I'm able to feel happy and comfortable, and it's a true privilege to be where I am at this point in my life. I'm surrounded by great people, I feel grounded, and I'm enjoying what the universe has to offer me during this season in my life's journey.
But life, like anything, can always be improved. That's the exciting thing about it. Even when you're on top of the world, there's still the potential for things to get even better.
Of course, it's essential to be present and bask in the sunlight of opportunity and happiness without wishing it away, but there are often hidden things in your life that are causing greater harm and struggle than even you may realize. It's these small, hidden things that build up in our subconscious and change the way that we feel, act, and view the world. But how do we discover these hidden things if we're not even aware that they exist in the first place? Well, regardless of your level of self-awareness, every single person requires a change in perspective to discover something new. And this challenge does just that.
This challenge was created by the author of The Third Door. Alex, who created this challenge, has said it almost instantly within 7 days will give you a greater sense of clarity in your life if you're feeling stuck. You get a blank piece of paper and you make a little T-chart. In the top left-hand corner of the little chart, you're gonna draw a cloud. On the other side of that chart, draw a little, nice little sun. And you're gonna set a timer for 15 minutes and sit down, and for the first half, about 7 minutes or so, write down, as specific as you can, all the things that make you feel like you've got a cloud over yourself. Use names, use specific situations, things that make you feel like there's a dark cloud over top of you and you're really feeling gloomy and gross. And then switch over, and for the last half of the 15 minutes, fill in the side of things that has the sun. What brings sun to your life? What makes you feel like that sun is shining in your face? What makes you happy? What makes you excited and enthusiastic about living life? Once you've done that every day for the next 7 days, before you start your day, first thing you're gonna do is read through that list. That means reading the good things, but also reading the bad things. And what this does is it helps you internalize those things that you're feeling and really reflect and understand what makes me feel gross and bad in my life and what makes me feel super happy and great. This challenge is a little 7-day challenge that I am going to start today, and hopefully it is as transformational as I've heard. Let's start the 7-day journey and we will see how it goes. We all know the good parts of our lives and the bad parts of our lives, but taking the time to write those things down makes them more significant. All of a sudden, the positives and negatives of your life become real, tangible things. Taking the time to sit down and write out the things that make me feel terrible in my life was an extremely uncomfortable experience. I didn't want to acknowledge a lot of the things on my list, but I tried my best to stay present and let everything flow because I knew it was part of the journey. And of course, it was wonderful to write out the things that make me feel amazing, but we'll get to that later. First morning that I sat down to intentionally read through my sun and clouds list was quite uneventful. To be honest, it felt like a waste of time. I thought that maybe this wasn't for me and the challenge wasn't gonna work, and it only took about 60 seconds to read through my list, and after that I didn't really feel anything like I thought I would. My list seemed like it was just words on a page. It didn't have any significance to me. I felt so ripped off by the experience that I reread through it 2 or 3 more times, and each time still felt that insignificance, that nothingness. There was no point to this. But because I was determined to carry on with this journey and this process, I put my book away and I decided to try again tomorrow. A couple of days went by and I kept with it, but every morning I still felt the same feeling of insignificance. This didn't seem like it had any point to me. But about halfway through the week, something switched and the process began to work. After a few days of reading through this list of things that make me feel really good and things that make me feel really bad, I started to notice that I would get this feeling of anxiety and tightness in my stomach when I would read a couple of the items at the bottom of my clouds list. And then it would pass. I started to notice this pattern with every day that I read through this list and felt the same way, and I wondered, why were these words on a page making me feel this way? And it was interesting to me because a lot of these things that were making me feel that way were just simple things, little tiny things that could be fixed in a matter of minutes. I made the decision to cross things off my list that made me feel gross simply by addressing them. The door handles in my apartment were loose, and I realized that this was making me feel really uncomfortable for no real reason. So I got out my toolbox, and in a couple minutes I had screwed them back on, and all of a sudden I felt a little lighter. It seems so silly to say, but just the act of addressing this thing that was on my list and crossing it off made everything feel a little less heavy. It was such a simple thing that was making me feel so unnecessarily uncomfortable, and that's what made me realize that this challenge for me was a checklist. As the week went on, I began to incorporate this awareness into my practice of reading through the list in the morning, and after addressing a few of these things on my clouds list, I realized that I needed to also try and do more of the things on the sun side. Most of these things were extremely simple acts: breathing in fresh air, spending more time outside, giving myself time to relax in the morning and unwind before bed. Sometimes I would forget and not do these things, but the act of being aware of their impact on me brought me a significant sense of peace. It made me start to realize that it really is the simple things in life that bring true happiness. As the week came to an end, I was starting to feel much more optimistic. I was starting to take note of some of the things that I didn't put on my list at the start of the week, and I was addressing them as soon as they came up. There was a noticeable shift in my awareness of how my actions and choices make me feel. However, after finishing up the week, there were still a few big items on the negative side of my list that I was not addressing. They felt little too cumbersome to try to overcome, and I just thought it was easier to avoid them, so I let it sit and I continued to feel uncomfortable. It wasn't until the self-reflection that came with actually writing out this video that I felt the urge to actually address this one big thing that was on my mind and making me feel like absolute crap. So I finally decided to address it, and it took me a total of about 5 minutes maybe, and after I completed it, the world felt so much lighter. My body relaxed, my mind felt more open and calm, and there was this greater sense of peace that I've been looking for that just showed up because I addressed this one thing that only took me a couple of minutes. And yet again, it was so blatantly clear that addressing the source of anxiety was the right thing to do, and it was actually the easy thing to do. And that's what I think this challenge taught me. I realized that there were a lot of things creating a feeling of uneasiness in my life, and a lot of these things were very small. Just by completing a small action, I could get rid of this negativity that was kind of weighing me down, and it really was not that much extra work. I also learned that there are a bunch of small, simple little things that make me feel great, and that I need to do more of them, and it's really not that hard sometimes to open the window and take a breath of fresh air or walk outside. Doing this challenge made me realize that I need to implement more of that in my life, because it's those little tiny things that build up and can help you feel that much better. The main overall lesson that I took away from this experience is that it's not worth letting things ruminate or sit. If you realize there's something that's bothering you, you need to address it as soon as possible, even if you think it's small and maybe I don't need to worry about that. If it's a simple sentence or conversation that will handle that, you should do it. Otherwise, it'll just sit there and it's gonna make you feel gross. So it's just worth addressing things as soon as possible. It really does make a difference. So even if you're someone who thinks you've got a handle on what's causing you stress and anxiety in your life, taking the time to sit down and write out those things and really think about them gives you a completely different perspective that nothing else can really recreate. And I think that's what the beauty and power is of doing this challenge. It's the act of writing them down and having to really think about it that makes it so transformational and eye-opening. Now, of course, every single person has a different life experience, and this challenge may not affect you the way it affected me, but I highly encourage you to sit down and think about the things that make you feel really gross and the things that make you feel on top of the world, because self-reflection is a true superpower that we all have access to, and by taking the time to tap into it, you too can start to change your life in just 1 week.